Believe it or not, but at one point, women did not have the right to vote. Not only did women lack suffrage of any kind at one point, they did not get the right to vote until the year 1920. The suffragist movement began in 1848 at Seneca Falls Convention. Some years after the 15th Amendment was passed, which gave African Americans the right to vote, the suffragist movement garnered even more attention, as many wondered why exactly women still did not have the right to vote.
The fight for women's suffrage in the United States began with the Seneca Falls Convention on July 19, 1848. At this convention, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and several other Quaker women presented the Declaration of Sentiments, a document that would become, to the suffrage movement, what the Declaration of Independence was to the Revolutionary War. The first of the King's sentiments is a statement. He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to elective franchise. The suffragist movement remained fairly silent throughout the Civil War and much of the rest of the 19th century. The movement was reinvigorated in 1887 when Susan B. Anthony founded the National American Women's Suffrage Association, which held a hearing on women's suffrage before every Congress. The next generation of suffragettes had some different ideas from those of Susan B. Anthony's generation. Women like Alice Paul and Lucy Burns viewed the older generation as stuffy and lacking fire. Instead of working for suffrage state by state, they wanted to replicate what they had seen in Britain, women out in the streets, fighting to gain suffrage from the federal government. In 1917, they formed the National Women's Party, and from 1917 to when the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, they fought for women's suffrage. They were attacked by the police, arrested, abused, and force-fed in response to the hunger strike in prison. Representative Bobby Rush of Illinois elaborates on their extraordinary struggle.
The women's suffrage movement went from 1848 to 1920. Generations of courageous women marched, they fasted, and they were arrested. Finally, in 1920, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote.
By now you're probably asking yourself the question, so what? It's great that women got the right to vote, but how are a bunch of ladies in petticoats relevant to today? I took this question to three women who are experts in the field of women's studies. The first was Patricia Campy, Associate Director of Operations at the Matilda Jocelyn Gage Foundation. This is what she said. During the women's suffrage movement from 1860 to 1920, for every dollar men earned, women earned 60 cents for the same job title and exact work. Today, 2012, for every dollar men earn, women earn 78 cents for the same job title and exact work. Women have gained 28 cents in earning after 152 years. Given that ratio, how long will it take for women to receive equal pay for equal work? The second person I corresponded with was Jamie Wolf, who is a park ranger at the Women's Rights National Historical Park. She said, take a look at the Declaration of Sentiments. You can see that the agenda for the women's rights movement today still contains many of the things on that document. The third person was Dr. Carrie Ann Baker, Professor of Women's Studies and Gender Studies at Smith College. She said, it's important for young people to learn about past social movements and how they changed society for the better. By learning about past movements, tactics, theories, challenges, and successes, young people might be more inclined to participate in the myriad of important social movements that are going on today.
Through the toil and suffering of thousands of women like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucy Stone, and Julia Ward Howe, the 19th Amendment was finally passed. Women's suffrage was an important milestone in making sure that all Americans had the same civil rights. A fight continued on with the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, and the gay rights movement. Women's suffrage is important to us not only because it grants women the right to vote, but because it symbolizes something larger, that democracy is a vibrant, polymorphous organism, that through the sweat of citizens can evolve to meet our changing needs, not just in history, but today.
Mr. Speaker, I want to remind our nation's law enforcement authorities all across the land that civil disobedience is as American as American pie. It is the act through which our great nation was conceived. It required great courage to do what they did at the Boston Tea Party. It required great courage for the great American Henry David Thoreau to refuse to go to war against Mexico in 1849, an act that gave birth to the anti-war movement that continues today. The equalities that we as Americans enjoy today are the result of those great, courageous Americans that fought for our liberties, Mr. Speaker.